Welcome to the Diversity Project's first podcast in our 2021 series, where we are going to explore how to accelerate gender balance in the fund management industry. And without further ado, let me hand over to Gillian Hepburn, who is going to lead the discussion with our three super panelists today.
Thanks very much, Sam, for that kind introduction. And today we're going to introduce a topic about the myths of diversity, and in particular about being a woman in financial services today. What does that look and feel like? And I am absolutely delighted to be joined by three amazing and diverse women at very different stages of their careers. And I think that's what's going to make this podcast quite interesting. So I'm going to start just a brief introduction on everybody, and actually maybe I should start with myself. So I'm Gillian Hepburn. I'm Intermediary Solutions Director at Schroders. I had a lengthy career with Standard Life, did some consulting with lots of different companies in financial services, and joined Schroders 2 years ago. I'm joined today by, first of all, Anne Roughhead, and Anne is actually, if I went all through Anne's profile, we could take up the full podcast. So some highlights. Anne is a non-executive director and chair at the Customer Focus Committee at Columbia Threadneedle. She's a non-executive director and the chair of REMCO at CCLA, chair of Handelsbanken and ACD, on the board of a number of different places. That interesting for me, on the board of the Rock Trust, which is a youth homeless charity. She's got over 30 years of experience in the investment financial sector, so Anne and I are in good company with each other on that one. Previous board positions, BNY Mellon, Lighthouse, Fundrock Partners, and interestingly, the Rugby Players Association. And in her exec career, I'm just going to highlight, she was CEO at LV Asset Management, a number of senior roles also at Citi and JP Morgan. I'm also joined by Suman Sidhu, and Suman works at Lane Clark and Peacock, specifically in their investment consulting department. She worked in the industry for 5 years, so you can see how we're now we're moving down the generation a little bit here. She's worked just over 5 years, previously having done a similar job at Aon, and where she joined in 2015 as a graduate. And alongside her client work, I think it's interesting to note that she's a member of the Gender Equality Work Stream within the Diversity Project, and also a member of LCP's Women's Network, which runs various initiatives to encourage more females to pursue careers in the investment industry. And last but by no means least, I'm joined by Polly Kilgour. And Polly is only 16, which is great to have her on board. And she's currently taking her A-levels, poor Polly. And also she sounds really sporty, so that's fun. She is really interested in a career in the city and was very keen to be involved today. And we're just delighted to have her on board, just to give the views of a young person who's interested in joining the industry, and why might that be. So I think you'll agree that we've got a great range of people on the podcast today with me, and we're going to start to explore this topic from a number of different perspectives. And I'm going to start with Anne. And you know, Anne, you and I have both been in the industry for a long time and seen lots of change, but where do you think we are with all of this currently, you know, particularly with regards to diversity and gender, and what might be some of the challenges, and actually maybe why are we still having these kind of conversations?
It's a topic that through our career has been diversity and been pulled one way and another, from right back at the beginning with diversity for disability or quotas, and now we're in another phase. For me, diversity isn't about what you look like. Diversity is the way you think, and that's your background. I mean, I don't know if you remember, and I think we were talking about this earlier. You know, female diversity wasn't really an issue when we came into the city. We just came in and got on with it. It was never highlighted. In fact, the biggest thing at that time was privileged and non-privileged backgrounds, whether you were male or female. So for me, diversity, let's stop thinking about what people look like and get some people in that think differently. I'm not sure with the factions that happen that we're going to be able to deal with diversity properly. So I think that's the challenge, that we're just going to go over the same ground as we have done in the last number of years.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because I don't know about you, I think often there's lots of discussions about it, but what can we actually do in practice to make a difference if we feel indeed that a difference needs to be made? So we'll hopefully we'll hold that thought and we'll come back to it. Saman, can I bring you into the conversation? What's your thoughts on all of this as somebody that's newer to the industry than Anne and myself?
Yeah, so I joined the industry 5 years ago as a graduate, as you mentioned, and actually my graduate intake, 50% was female, so it was very, very even. I guess what I've seen over the last 5 years of working in this industry is female representation at the junior level is actually really good. And HR and recruitment make it that way, There's a real emphasis on making sure that we get people from lots of different backgrounds in at that entry level. I guess what I've realised is there's fewer women at that middle management level. And I think therefore that then leads to significantly fewer women to hire and promote to the senior leadership roles. And then post that, women just decrease at every subsequent level, which is a shame. So I think if more women were promoted to that first level management at the same rates as men, we'd then be able to have more women in senior positions. In terms of gender diversity and what I've seen that senior management do actually take it quite seriously. And actually, what they now probably need to do is put that commitment into action a little bit more and actually drive some change. And the ways in which we might be able to do that, is setting diversity targets and actually sharing more openly diversity metrics. What's been really great is the initiative for gender pay gap reporting, but actually there's loads of other diversity metrics that can be shared, and we need to make the industry do that and almost force the industry to do that a bit more.
Some great points here, and I'm going to come back to recruitment in a minute, because I think I'm absolutely with you on this one. But just before we look at those in a bit more detail, Polly, as somebody who's looking at our industry, I guess, a little bit from the outside, what's your views on that? What do you think our industry looks like? Because you're keen to come and work with us in the city.
Yeah, I think kind of from a younger person's perspective, I think finance is often seen as kind of very influential and powerful and of high responsibility, because there's kind of a lot of risk-taking, alpha male dominated industry, because obviously it's kind of got a lot of influence in like the world, so it's got the power to cause like big global financial crashes and stuff, which means there's quite a lack of trust about the industry. And because women are stereotypically seen as more risk adverse, I think young people would tend to view finance as a man's industry, and so they'd be less willing to probably put themselves forward to join the industry.
Yeah, that's a really interesting viewpoint in terms of the kind of the male female in the industry. So Anne, coming back to you, what's your thoughts on some of this in terms of what Saman and Polly are discussing here?
Well, I think, if you're going to be diverse about this, females have absolutely different skills to men. And up until now, I've seen the industry hiring in its own image because it's comfortable in its own image. And the diversity agenda is pushing to do something quite different. But to your point, Sam, it has to be more than tick the box. They have to buy into the fact that women, and to your point, Polly, the trust element, people in our industry are always talking about how can I get my clients to trust me to give me their money? Well, women are really good at that. They do it in every aspect of their life. And therefore hiring more women, not just in operational areas, but in sales areas, in client relationship areas, because it's about retention and bringing money in. So I think we could certainly learn from that. But then it's not just the finance industry. There's lots of industry hiring their own. So it's interesting to hear Polly thinks they're all males.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, Anne, in terms of trust and managing money, because I think, maybe it's a generalization, but most women often manage the household finances. So if we're trusted to do that, I'm sure we can be trusted to do other things as well in terms of finance. We talked a bit here about early recruitment, and I think, Saman, you made a really good point that recruitment does feel diverse, and I certainly feel that, and also felt that joining the industry. So, when I joined over 30 years ago, likewise, I was on a management training scheme. I was one of 4, and we were all female. So I just didn't think there was an issue. I just thought that's the way the world was. And it's probably not until I moved into a distribution role, interestingly, that I felt that the diversity balance was quite different with predominantly males. Didn't have a problem with it, but it's interesting, that was kind of my first wake up to maybe different parts of the industry are a little bit different. In terms of the recruitment piece, do we all believe that that's the case then, that at the moment it does feel very diverse, but it feels maybe there's a sticking point partway up the organisation? Saman, what do you think?
I think there definitely is. There's a point at which it drops off quite dramatically, which is a real shame. And a lot of people might say it's due to the fact that women go and have children, and then they have childcare responsibilities. It's difficult for them to get back into work. I think a big part of it also is though, women can have insecurities where they just don't feel confident enough to put themselves forward for those senior leadership roles. And it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because if you look at the senior leadership boards of many companies, they are predominantly male. So that in itself might put you off, it might not fit in. Where are all the other women? But actually, we need to change that culture and actually push women to go into those more senior leadership roles. And the ways in which I think companies can do that is actually even provide more training to women. Let them know what those senior leadership roles are really about, provide mentoring, help them get there. And maybe we lack a bit of that at the moment.
Anne, what's your thoughts? I'm sure you'll have a view on this one.
Look, I think the network that men have to get up the curve, because nobody teaches you, at training courses as to how to deal in a meeting. I don't know about you, Gillian, but you learn to on the job from great male mentors.
Absolutely.
Don't stand in the corner of the room, get into the middle and speak to people. All of those things are skills that you're learning. Because women do not network in the same way as men do, and feel that we're all a middle management, we're all a bit of a threat, because we know they're only going to let 20% of us or 30% of us up on that top table. So it's back, girls, because it's me, I'm going to do it. That I don't think we support each other at middle management well enough. Men will tip each other off when there's a job coming up, saying, don't worry about it because it's this. So all that informal stuff, I don't think women do enough of it.
Yeah, I think I would probably agree in terms of the networking piece. I don't think sometimes we're very good at it, or we tend to just network with each other, with other women, as opposed to kind of broader. Polly, one of the things we've talked about here a little bit is about confidence. Do you think that maybe lacking in confidence starts way back, early on at sort of your stage in life?
I think partially, because I think women and kind of girls are more self-aware in trying to fulfill societal expectations of kind of reaching their goals, and potentially feeling they must work harder in order to achieve the same recognition for things, which would obviously immediately influence their self-confidence. But I think there's also a wide lack of understanding in young people about the industry in general. And I think that means that we don't understand that actually there's a lot of accessibility for women in the industry, because it's naturally considered a hard profession to break into. And so I think the lack of confidence is in ourselves, and actually the fact that it is an industry which anyone can go into, that you just have to decide that you want to.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you made a comment also earlier about there's still a perception that it's a male dominated or a male industry. Saman, what do you think about that? Was that your feeling coming into the industry a few years ago?
It definitely was, because I guess I'm quite a motivated individual, and when I'd look at the board level representation, it seemed quite male. I thought, would I ever get to that level? I want a job where I will get to that level, and maybe it won't happen for me in investment. It's interesting though, because I think we've seen a lot of progress on that point in terms of educating, students at university on what the investment industry is. I know in both the roles I've had at various different firms, I've definitely been involved in a lot of mentoring initiatives where externally we reach out to university students and really try and help them understand what the investment industry involves, and you know, in particularly females as well, and say you do have the skills to be able to do this. So I think we've seen progress. Have we seen the results that we wanted? Probably not. But like we all know, with diversity and inclusion, these initiatives, it takes quite a lot of time to see change. And it's that interesting point, isn't it? We have a lot of female representation at junior levels. How long until that trickles through and we start to see it at more senior levels?
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, I agree with Anne's point about the fact that women traditionally have almost been taught to be competitive with one another, because it just feels like there hasn't been enough jobs for women at the top levels. But actually there's a lot of research that shows that if women have an inner circle of really, really close female contacts, they're more likely to succeed and they're more likely to get those executive positions. Am I guilty of sometimes feeling I'm in competition with my peers? 100%. Do I need to do work to change that and actually try and support people that I work with? Yes. So there needs to be a real shift in our mindsets to say, actually, you know, we can all get it. It's not me or you. Let's both try and get it. Let's both encourage each other. Let's learn from our experiences and our hardships and give each other tips. And that needs to be, you know, a real shift in mindset, I think.
Yeah, some really interesting points. I'm just going to pick up. I'm going to pick up on a couple of them, but particularly the piece that you mentioned about at university, and now there's a feeling that financial services is much more. I guess what you were indicating to me was much more advertised as a career for women. It was only a few years ago that I was asked to go and speak at my old university about only being a woman, being a woman in financial services, and with only an English degree. So clearly I wasn't deemed as clever enough because I didn't have an economics or maths degree. It was a bit worrying actually at the time. But anyway, that's a whole other story, potentially for a whole other podcast. Anne, Saman made some really interesting points here about, you know, competitiveness and confidence and, you know, and support for each other. What's your thoughts on that one?
Well, again, I look back and go, I've always got my confidence or learning stuff from the guys I work with, who once you're in the game, and you're accepted as one of them, and you can start to work that network as well. But confidence is a difficult thing. Some people look very confident. I can tell you that the majority of women, even if they look confident, will be going, did I do okay? Was it fine? Was it kind of, and if I said to you that our male colleagues, because a lot of them are in relationships with us, they've got sisters, brothers, their wives, they know that's our Achilles heel. And they will know when they're in a competitive situation, just to give that slight comment about oh, it's only an English degree you've got. And suddenly you go, oh my God, yes, it is that's all I've got. And so knowing that again, it's about all these companies or this industry is a game, and we have to look at the rules and see how it works and beat them at their own game. Because my experience having managed men is that they are just as underconfident as we are, but they just hide it better. And there's that little bit of confidence in there that goes, like L'Oreal, I want more money because I'm worth it. So they will ask for more money. They'll blag more than we will. They will apply for jobs where they can only do 4 things on the list of 10. We just need to find that confidence and not start from that. I have to work harder to compete, because you start from a level playing field.
Yeah,
and
there's a bit of Men Are From Mars in there, I think, actually.
It's a very good book.
A very good book, yeah. So confidence it's a really interesting area to explore, but also the support. Samantha, what's your thoughts? I know we've talked a bit about supporting each other. Where are you on this one?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because more recently I have been reading up a lot about imposter syndrome. And I'm one of these people that can suffer with confidence. And I guess a lot of the times when I go to meetings, etc., at work, I will go with a partner who is typically a lot older than me, is typically a white male also. So even before I step into that meeting or even start presenting on something, I already feel like, do I belong there? And, you know, because I'm a brown person, I'm quite young in my career, people naturally might look at me and just think she doesn't have as much experience as the partner I'm going with. So I already feel I'm on the back foot, and you know, I could be presenting something that I've worked on for months and really confident about inside out, but as soon as I step in, I lose that. And it's a real shame, isn't it? But it is something that exists across women, and it really is unfair at points. How can we try and get around that? What can other people do to try and help us with that? I think, you know, people just need to be aware that it exists. That partner that I go to that meeting with needs to just think, you know, how might someone feel? And not telling me how I feel, just being aware of the situation. I wouldn't ever want him to say to me, you feel this way, don't you? Of course not, that's not what I'm saying, but just to be aware the type of feeling I might have and try and support me through that. And we've started having some really open and transparent conversations this year. You know, they've largely been around Black Lives Matter, but in doing that, I think people have become, you know, really open about their feelings. And I definitely have. Sometimes I would shy away from even saying I'm a brown person. I'd say I'm a person of colour, but there's no need to use that terminology. You actually just say I'm a brown person. And I think what's really important is from having the open and transparent conversations that I know you'll come onto this, that the younger generation typically do quite well.
Yeah.
And we've seen that generational shift. From having the open and transparent conversations, you really learn. And it's not always about saying the right thing, it's saying anything at all and not just being quiet and ignoring the issue that's so vividly there.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Sarah. I went to a session recently about how do you just get into the conversation? How do you break into a conversation that's going on around you? And I think sometimes, yeah, in my experience, maybe generalizing, but women are really bad at doing that. You know, we kind of put our hand up a little bit, or we say something and then we sit back if we don't manage to break in. So I think there's loads of interesting things there. I was also told once to put my qualifications on my business card so that I could get to the party quicker. That was following a really important meeting where I took the lead on it. But it was really interesting that somebody felt that, you know, just putting qualifications on a business card made people take me more seriously. Interesting things. Polly, Saman talked there a little bit about conversations around across the generations, and you know, there's a view that the younger generation is much better at talking about this than perhaps us old folks. Sorry, that's myself.
Not for yourself.
And Anne, speak for myself. What's your thoughts, Polly?
I think definitely over the past couple of years, I've seen me and my friends have had a lot more conversations about topics that would previously have been seen a bit more taboo, kind of controversial. But I think also in younger generations, there's a massive culture of people kind of imposing their ideas on each other. So it's definitely possible to have a lot of freedom of thought. I think you can think a lot of things, but it's often very difficult to say those things because I think there's quite a lot of pressure from peer groups and also a lack of confidence to speak out against other people's ideas in younger generations, which I think can actually inhibit progress in society and kind of prevent diversity of ideas and perspectives.
Yeah, diversity of ideas and thoughts really, it's kind of the important piece here. And you know, you talk a lot about this because it shouldn't be, we shouldn't have to have these conversations. It shouldn't be about what gender we are. It just should be about what do we bring to the party that's different. Have you got other thoughts on that one?
Well, you know, I say that people hire in their image.
Yeah.
You can be a pretty confident manager or leader of a business to bring the part-time in, to bring the, you know, people who don't think the same way. Actually, having a management team where you've got people who tell you to wind your neck in because they're confident that they can do that. Now, we talk about confidence for women. Don't you think that men lack confidence because they hire in their own image? because they need to get the confidence to go, actually, if I heard somebody say to me, she's really good, she's a bit much though, isn't she? What it actually means is she's got something to say and she's not afraid to say it. So getting men to get the confidence that go, actually, by having different skills and different age groups and, listening to young people, I see it in the distribution space. You can never crack distribution if you're still going on about somebody who wants paper copies of something and they don't know how to use that. Actually, it's gone digital. So because I don't understand it, I need younger people to say to me, actually, this is how this app works. And actually, if we did it this way, it wouldn't work. And so again, I'm an absolute advocate of diversity of thought and background. I think it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Saman, have you got some points there?
Yeah, and from working at the firms I've worked at, I've been lucky enough to help out with recruitment, something that I really enjoy doing. And actually in the last 5 years, what I've seen is for the role I do, typically we only recruit people that have an economics or a mathematics degree, and I have a mathematics degree, but actually we've taken the requirement away, which is so good. And we don't have that, requirement anymore, which is a huge change. And when I was at university, I remember going to the finance careers fair, and it'd be marketed so widely amongst the economics and mathematics students, and it wouldn't really reach out to people that did history or geography and the rest of it,
or English like me.
Or English, yeah. Which is just not okay, because what I've typically seen in my experience is when we do have students that have done history or English or geography, they bring a lot more to the table, and you don't actually want to work somewhere where everyone thinks the same way, because you're just not going to get good innovation. You're not going to get good ideas. You're not going to get people challenging you and saying, maybe we shouldn't do it that way. But
Absolutely.
when you have the people challenging you, that's where the business grows, and that's where you get the success. So I'm really glad that we've made progress, and it feels like we're doing the right things. I've seen a lot of firms that have taken away, these requirements. So I think that's really great, and I think it's a really, really good step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I would agree there. I think the diversity of thought at the end of the day is just vital to any organisation. And I do think we've made progress, but we've probably got some areas where we could do better. If I was thinking of the old school report card. Are there any just last thoughts before we finish up? Polly, has this helped your understanding and your thinking about what financial services is like and the place of, I guess, women in there?
Yeah, I think definitely it's shown me that there's a lot of opportunities for women, and I think it's shown me that there is still kind of a bit of a stigma that it's a male-dominated industry, which isn't actually true, and it's just about women finding the confidence to actually speak up and kind of share their opinions, share their perspectives, and that actually helps a company more, because a broader range of perspectives will help them make more informed decisions. So actually the fact that women are kind of seen as having occasionally different skill sets, we're more deeper thinkers, we think differently sometimes about certain things, that's actually really beneficial to companies. And so even though you might be kind of lacking confidence, it's better just to put yourself forward and try and go for things which you would like to achieve, rather than letting kind of fear of the industry itself stop you from that.
Sure, that's a great summary. Thank you. Saman, what's your some closing thoughts from you on this one?
I think my key takeaways from this is really the point I made about women supporting one another, because I think it's something I really need to work on. I mean, when you support other women, at first it might feel like you're taking the attention away from yourself, but I think it actually shows that you're a supportive team player, and that's one of the really great things about leadership roles. It's a key part of a leadership role, and it also shows that you're secure enough in yourself to praise other women and bring other women up. And then the second key takeaway from me is to really just continue the open and transparent conversations we've had around D&I this year, which have largely been focused on race, which is great, but let's try and bring gender diversity into that, and not be afraid to say what we think, not be afraid to always have to be politically correct, but also not judge other people for having different opinions, and don't try to impose them, like Polly said.
Yeah, And go for it. I'm sure you've got lots to finish up with.
No. 3 points. First one is the spotlight is on us. Okay, and
Yeah.
while the spotlight is on us, we need to get into the industry, get into the game. And then my advice to you is go disrupt.
I love that as an end phrase, go disrupt. I think there's huge opportunities for women in our industry. And I think what we've done today is just scratch the surface actually in terms of thinking about all of this. We've covered a number of topics. I think we've still got to look at that middle management piece and what happens and why do we start with diverse recruitment and we maybe don't end with that. Is it a generation? Is it going to take a generation or 2 generations maybe to really make change or to change some of this? I don't know the answers, and I think over the next year we're going to have fun looking at some of this. So hopefully that's been a great start to our podcast, and I'm just going to hand back to Sam to make some final closing comments.
Thanks, Gillian, and thanks also to Anne, Saman and Polly. What an amazing session. Thoroughly enjoyed sitting there listening to that. I hope all of you that are out there watching this have and are listening to it maybe in your car. But we've got another one that we'll be doing in a month's time. So join us back there for that. We will tell you all the dates and times. But thank you very much. Bye and see you next time.